How the soul discharges its passions on false objects when the true are wanting. One of our gentlemen, who was wondrously subject to the gout, on being urged by the doctors to give up entirely the use of salt meats, used to answer them very humorously that in the agonies and torments of the illness he wanted to have something to blame, and by crying out and cursing now the sausage, now the ox tongue, and the ham, he felt just that much relieved. But in all seriousness, just as when the arm is raised to strike, it hurts us if the blow does not land and is wasted on the air, also as the sight to make a pleasant view must not be lost and led away in the vague reaches of the air, but must have some bound to sustain it at a reasonable distance, as wind loses its strength diffused in empty space, unless some strong dense wood resist its forward pace. Lucan, I don't know. So it seems that the soul, once stirred and set in motion, is lost in itself unless we give it something to grasp, and we must always give it an object to aim at and act on. Plutarch says of those who grow fond of monkeys and little dogs that the loving part that is in us, lacking legitimate object, rather than remain idle, thus forges itself a false and frivolous one, and we see that the soul in its passions will sooner deceive itself by setting up a false and fantastical object, even contrary to its own belief, than not act against something. Thus animals are carried away by their rage to attack the stone or the metal that has wounded them, and to take revenge tooth and nail on themselves for the pain they feel. So the Pannonian bear, made fiercer by the sting, when struck by the dart from the Labian hunter's sling, turns on the wound enraged, attacks the buried spear, which whirls as she whirls after, fleeing as she draws near. Lucan. What causes do we not invent for the misfortunes that befall us? On what do we not place the blame, rightly or wrongly, so as to have something at which to thrust? It is not those blonde tresses that you are tearing, nor the whiteness of that bosom that in your anger you beat so cruelly, that have made you lose by an unlucky bullet that well-loved brother. Place the blame elsewhere. And wrote a challenge to Mount Athos. Cyrus wasted a whole army's time for several days taking vengeance on the river Gindus for the fright he had crossing it, and Caligula ruined a very beautiful house for the displeasure that his mother had there. Augustus Caesar, having been battered by a tempest at sea, set about defying the god Neptune, and in the celebration of the circus games had his image removed from the place where it was among the other gods to take vengeance on him, wherein he is still less excusable than the preceding ones, and less than he was later, when, having lost a battle under Quintilius Varus in Germany, he went about in anger and despair, banging his head against the wall and crying, "Varus, give me back my soldiers." For those surpass all madness who, adding impiety to folly, turn their blame against God himself or against fortune, as if she had ears susceptible to our assault. Now, as that ancient poet says in Plutarch, anger at things that happen shows small wit, for all our wrath concerns them not a bit. But we shall never heap enough insults on the unruliness of our mind.